Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I'm Cipher, and this is the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. Sorry if the wind makes this video a tad noisy. Today I'd like to talk to you about the concept of religion as a mental illness. Something which many people take to be insulting and completely ridiculous, and when I first heard of it, I, for the most part, dismissed outright. At the time, I was, in fact, basically an atheist agnostic, and to a degree still am. But I was never one of the militant Hitchens-Dawkins New Age conversionary atheists, even at a time in my life when I thought it was for the best to convert people around me from their religions, and did my best to do so. I no longer partake in that particular contest. I don't know. However, recently I saw it posed that it was ridiculous that religion be considered a mental illness, and given that the entire concept of my YouTube and Twitter profile is to test the strength of ideas by arguing against them, I thought I'd play. And started looking into the definitions of mental illness and religion and most of the world's well-known religions fairly well, and found that there is at least an argument to be made that religion is definable as a mental illness. Now, I don't mean this to be insulting in any way, and I hope you'll bear with me as we go through some of the background and details of what I mean. Now, first we have to start with something I've touched on in a couple of my other videos: the reason for religion in our society in the first place. Now, of course, religious people will tell you that the reason is truth or power or, being prepared for the afterlife, and it certainly has to do with the afterlife, but one of the rational, logical reasons that has emerged from years of study is that religion is basically a response to the very natural sense of fear that humans have of the unknown, and especially of what comes after death, if there's an afterlife, and what it entails. People are afraid of their being just going away. People fear death because on some level they know there might not be anything after it. Even most true believers have that nagging doubt. Now, someone logical and rational, reasonable in my opinion, will face this fear and face the reasons behind it. Our natural evolutionary instinct to survive and propagate makes it natural for us to want to continue on. And, well, naturally we'll be evolving towards living longer, one would think, becoming more efficient beings. So, it would even make sense from a evolutionary scientific perspective that the universe might evolve in a way as to include some sort of eternal afterlife without there being any divine creator. So as someone who tries to be incredibly open-minded and scientifically based, I still think that there's an argument both for and against the afterlife. I face these as two different possibilities, of which I will probably not know the conclusion with any certainty until I die, and then only if one of the options is true. Otherwise, I won't know anything at all anymore. And see, I'm fine with that. I've come to terms with it. I've faced the options, and I'm alright with it. But I think a lot of people, quite understandably, have a hard time facing the options and would much rather just be, led along as to what to believe. This is a fear that leads them to look at the world in less than logical ways. And this is one of the things that leads to the birth of religion, because religion gives you, in most cases, there are a few religions that might be exceptions, but for the most part, religions give you hope of the for an afterlife, or some sort of eternalness for yourself. At the very least, they give you a purpose for the life that you have, a set of rules to ensure that you've been a good person and can at least die with a solid moral backbone. I don't know. Regardless, I think we might have to take the time to define religion here. Now, religion can be defined in many different ways, but there are a couple that are pretty widely accepted. I'm going to go through those here. One is the belief in a supernatural creator being, usually a god, that has, made everything. And the other is a series of rituals and beliefs. Now, a series of rituals and beliefs doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the supernatural, and could even be considered to describe political parties. So it is, much like the dictionary definition of the word cult, almost so broad as to be useless. The other is a lot more widely accepted and used, as basically every major religion believes in a supernatural entity or being, but there are some good exceptions. Like Buddhism doesn't necessarily believe that Buddha is any more of a supernatural deity than any of us, just that he was the first to reach an enlightenment that is there for everyone. They do, however, believe in an afterlife, which I think is, honestly speaking, a much more defining feature of what is a religion. So, while belief in a supernatural entity or creator being is definitely a marker of religion, I don't know that it fits as a definition in this day and age as well as it once did. As we've culturally expanded to learn more about the world's religions, it might be time for us to look at that definition again. And I might even owe somebody I don't like very much on Twitter an apology for scoffing at the idea that I should define religion for them. I said they have a dictionary, and the dictionary definition would have certainly worked for the point I was making. This one works better. So, religion is, I would say, a series of beliefs and rituals structured around preparing for the afterlife. I like that definition. A series of beliefs and or rituals structured around preparing for the afterlife. If you can find me something that is, generally speaking, considered to be or honored as a religion and doesn't fit that criteria, let me know, because I can't think of any offhand, though I can think of plenty of religions that don't fit the more widely accepted dictionary definition. So in that case, if religion is, as I'm proposing it is, mostly about preparing yourself for an afterlife, that means the very basis, the very foundation for its existence comes from a deep-seated fear of death. Now, this video is about how religion relates to mental illness. Mental illness, though I don't have the definition in front of me, is a wide range of things. If you Google search the definition for mental illness, you'll probably see the one I'm talking about. It's the first thing that popped up when I did it. And it mentions anxiety disorders. Now, phobias, irrational fears, or fears that are not based in logic or reason about the world around you, but in something else, are listed under anxiety disorders in most cases. So, because fear is just one expression of anxiety, a part of anxiety, we don't say that we have fear disorders. We have phobias. And they're part of our list of anxiety disorders. Fear of death, or of not having anything after death, fear of there being no afterlife, which is really fear of death and fear of there being no afterlife are kind of different, and I think that socially they're mostly tied together, but that a lot of these religious fanatics really don't fear death. A lot of them rush to embrace it. What they fear is there not being anything after it. They fear the loss of their self, of their identity. So, while it's completely natural, as we want to survive and evolve and reproduce, to fear death or to fear the end of our beings, it's not really based in anything logical or reasonable. I mean, if you stop and think about it, we know that the cycle will probably continue on without us. For our race, for our species, for the world around us. I mean, sure, there are people who think that we're going to kill the planet. I don't happen to be one of them. I certainly think that there are issues that we should be dealing with. I'm not saying that I deny that there is climate change. I just don't think that it is as severe as some people have said. But that's off topic. Regardless, though, I guess it is almost becoming religious, and we could discuss the irrational fears there and whether or not some of the causes that social justice warriors fight for would also put them into the realm of mental illness, but perhaps for another video. However, not meaning to be insulting at all, but as religions, basically all of them in the mainstream, and certainly all of them by the definition which I've stated here, are based on preparing for the afterlife. Well, you only have to prepare because you're afraid of what might happen if you don't. And given that there isn't so far any logical or rational argument for the afterlife, I mean, there isn't any hard science backing the idea, at least, it's not a rational or reasonable fear. It's a natural one, and one that I can completely understand, and one that I think most people at some point in their life feel before coming to terms with it and facing it on an individual level and based on their own individual experiences. But that's the thing. I think that individualists will find their own reasons not to fear death, whereas religious people are letting their emotions drive them towards a group answer. Because rather than face their fear with logic and reason, they'd rather run from an irrational phobia. And, well, if you're using a series of complicated rituals to try to escape from an irrational phobia, that certainly fits within the description of an anxiety disorder, which is definitively a mental illness. But hey, that's just my opinion. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, because while I was absolutely disgusted with one of the people I was discussing this with on Twitter, because they weren't really posing any real arguments and were mostly just falling back on insults, they eventually tagged in a much smarter and more reasonable person who had a just delightful back and forth with me, which helped prepare me for this video. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, because, again, I've already had one great discussion on this subject, and I'd love to have more. I know you humans need to be reminded to like and subscribe, and please share my video with a friend. I mean, if you enjoy it enough to share. Thanks, as always, for watching. I'm your host, Cipher, and this has been the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. Sorry for the long wait in between the videos. I lost my phone on my last day off, and, well, I'm in the last couple weeks of this crazy carnival job, so I'll have more time for you soon. Also, sorry for the wind, but, well, this was kind of the only time and place I had to film the video, and I really wanted to get one out. Have fun, everyone.